And welcome on into the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. George, we got a mega pod here. We got a mega pod on tap for you today. Blaine Bishop, former Titans DB, now does a great job hosting down in Nashville. We'll hop on the pod now. Friend of the podcast, joining us again to preview the Titans perspective as we get set for a massive, George, a massive Titans-Colts game. It's Titans week. Does the air smell a little different? It feels different, George. This week feels different than most. Titans coming to town. Got to win this one here. Got to win it.
Yeah, former Ball State legend Blaine Bishop on the way
Good
to
call.
the
Good call.
day, and absolutely Tennessee week. And I don't think there's any question. I mean, we can throw this out there to the listeners, but this is the biggest rivalry the Colts have now, right? I mean, for decades it was the Patriots, but it's got to be Tennessee now, right?
It has to be Tennessee, especially since you owned them for a while, and now that tables have flipped in recent memory. I'm with you. They've been consistently the thorn in their side. That's one where, at least for me, selfishly, I take the most pleasure in beating in recent memory. So yeah, since the Patriots have fizzled out and since Luck retired and Brady left, I'm with you. I think by far this is the biggest rivalry the Colts have on a yearly basis. It means a lot more. We'll get into a massive matchup here for the Titans where it's time to end a streak. It's time to put your foot down and fight for the first time, George, in a long time. But bigger news than even the Titans coming to town. Very little can overshadow that. But bigger than the Titans coming to town is the return of JT23. George, he was at practice on Wednesday. It was a walkthrough, but listed as a full participant. And today, as we record this on Thursday, JT, for the first time in a very long time, spoke and met with the media. Overall, George, we'll get into what he said and kind of parse out his comments here. Your overall thoughts on JT's press conference, you come away feeling what?
Mixed. He's obviously excited, so that's good. I think we had talked on Monday's pod or Tuesday's pod, and you can go back and check that out. That we believe Shane Steichen when he said that, because Shane doesn't usually give a lot of extra details that he doesn't need to give. And I think that was pretty clear. If anything else, it's clear that JT's excited to get back on the football field. But I was a little bit concerned by what he didn't say. He didn't answer a couple questions directly. Somebody asked him point blank, do you want to be a Colt? He said, I'm here right now. Then he went on into, wanting to play for championships and things like that. Would not talk about the contract, would not talk about that whole situation. Would not say he's rescinded his trade request. So clearly they're in a better place, him and the team. There's no doubt about that. The fact that he was in the room talking is evidence enough of that. I do think he's excited to play for the team for the rest of this year, and I think that's all that matters right now. But I think still long-term, there's a lot of questions here.
So I come away positive. And I think especially one that you just got mentioned right away, you are concerned about a quote. I actually take it more as a positive as this. So like you said, he was asked point blank, do you want to be a Colt? And he said, I'm here right now, which is, in athlete terms is right now, yes, but long-term, no, right? That's basically the nice way of saying, yeah, if I can get out of town, I would. I am actually not that turned off by that quote. And here's why. It was kind of like this, that to me is a 2024 offseason problem. I think right now the biggest concern for the Colts is right now in the here and now. And I think, at least for me right now, they, in season at least, crossed the biggest bridge in getting him back on the field. And at least seemingly, we'll get into, your thoughts, and especially since you're in the room, seemingly getting a motivated Jonathan Taylor to be on the field in 2023. What happens in 2024 and beyond, it's when the Colts basically said, we're not going to give you a contract extension now, back in the offseason. Then that contract always was going to be a future problem. And so even though he did not commit to being a Colt long-term, that to me is one of those where his play on the field is going to dictate that. Right? If he does not play well the rest of the season, then if the Colts are not willing to give him a contract last offseason, they're not going to give him a contract this offseason. If he plays great, maybe I'm wrong. I'm still under the belief that the Colts will at least try to keep JT around long-term, whether he wants to actually be here or not and accept maybe a lesser deal somewhere else just to leave Indy. Different story. But I think at least right now, the biggest thing the Colts had to do for 2023 and 2023 only is get Jonathan Taylor on the field and have his play decide if he wants to be here or not. And so I get what you're saying in terms of long-term, but I think that to me was always a problem in the offseason anyway. And so the fact that they at least got him here and seemingly got him here on good terms to be, he's not a mercenary or he's not someone who feels like he is going to half-ass it, the rest of the season. I think that's a big win for the Colts here, at least again, in the short term.
And I think we've said all along, his problem isn't with his teammates. His problem isn't with head coach Shane Steichen. It's with the front office. So, I think he's always going to be supportive of those guys in the locker room, and they've been supportive of him. I think that's an important element too. I mean, everybody in that locker room the last couple of days has said, welcome him back with open arms, excited to get him back here. Zaire Franklin said he's been dreaming about the potential of a Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson combo in the backfield. So I think, there's a lot of excitement around the team right now. And like you said, rightfully so, because I think for the immediate future, for the short term here, it's all good news right now. He's here. He's healthy. He did say that. So he's ready to go. Now, will he be ready to go on Sunday? We're going to find that out the rest of the week here. But in the very near future, we know within a 3-week window, he's going to be back on the field. And that can only help this football team, in the present. I do think, and you've said a version of this really since day one, since he was placed on PUP way back when they reported training camp. I do think his best leverage right now is to go out and play really good football. But I think part of that too is get the fans behind him. In that regard, today was a big success. I mean, I think the tone on social media has really changed. Fans are really excited. They want to see him back out there. They want to see how he does. But I think we've seen Jim Irsay before kind of react to large movements in the fan base. And I think if Taylor comes out and plays well, the fans start actively saying, hey, pay this guy, that to me is the best lever he can pull.
And that, George, that right there, what you just said is why I'm not concerned when he's asked point blank, do you want to be a Colt? He says, I'm here right now. That because I think his play is going to truly dictate if he's here long term or not. You mentioned before, right? Jim Irsay is definitely someone who maybe sometimes is guided too much by his emotions. And he's talked to us since day number one, right? Dreaming of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the backfield together, having a lot of success. If they hit it off and they are a tremendous 1-2 combo, AR's game improves drastically because Jonathan Taylor's there. Jonathan Taylor benefits from AR's dual threat, capabilities. And he's now rushing for 1,000 yards in the next 10, 11, 12 games. He's on the field. I think Jim Irsay would have no choice but to say, we can't, break this up. Especially if this team, if we're talking about a team, George, where our win projections, right, we talked about a few weeks ago after the Ravens game, if we were conservatively, I think fairly saying this team should win 8 games, right? So that means you are in the mix. You're, again, at least competitive throughout the entire season. For Jim Irsay wanting and publicly declaring to win multiple Lombardi trophies here in the next decade, now what are we on, 7 years left or something like that, whenever he said that 2 years ago, last year? The clock is ticking on that. But if this team is competitive, I don't think Jim Irsay is going to sit there and say, well, this team really took it to the next level when Jonathan Taylor returned, but now we're not going to pay him, and now we're just going to, run it back with Zach Moss and maybe pick another running back up off the scrap heap, and we're just going to break up what was working with AR and JT. I think, like I said, if the fans get behind right now this combo, if Jonathan Taylor plays well in the field and meshes well with his offense, I just don't see a situation how Jim Irsay in the offseason is not going to give Jonathan Taylor, within reason, what he wants contractually.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. I mean, that's what started this whole thing. And I know people don't really want to hear that. And a lot of people out there don't believe it, but it all started with the Colts basically saying, no, we're not going to pay you. And then it went, off the track from there. And now it's back on the track. And like you said, that's ultimately what matters. At the end of the day, for this season, what matters is what we saw from Jonathan Taylor up there right now is a guy who seems to be all in. We were talking about that last week. Can he come in and put the baggage behind him and join in this locker room right now that's kind of lined up behind Shane Steichen? I think the answer to that right now appears to be yes. So that's important. I also think a lot of this, every conversation comes back to number 5. Eventually, it all comes back to him. And I think as far as Taylor's future, I think Richardson plays a big role in that. If Taylor ends up having the same feeling about Richardson that most fans do right now, that the media does, that the other guys in the locker room do, that this, is maybe the guy, that this was the right decision. It's a bit harder for him to move on that way too. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I know that AR has said that he's reached out to him before, and he seemed on Wednesday. He seemed really excited about getting to play with him for the first time. Uh, Richardson's a guy that's really easy to kind of get behind. We've seen how quickly he's won over his teammates, how quickly he voted a captain, all the things that have happened there. So I can see him intentionally reaching out here and cultivating this relationship with Jonathan Taylor. And I think it's in Taylor's best interest too, because whether he wants to be here or somewhere else, in 2024, that relationship between him and Richardson is what's going to dictate how well he plays this year. And obviously it's clearly in Taylor's best interest to go out and have the best year possible.
That last part, right? Jonathan Taylor's best interest to have the best year possible. That to me, George, at least was what I took away from the tone of the press conference. That to me is what he sounded like he understood. Maybe it took him a while to get there, or maybe he just didn't because we didn't hear him speak publicly. Maybe he understood that back in training camp, but figured he could try to kick his feet and make some noise and try to still almost will his way to getting what he wants. But that at least sounded to me when you hear him talk on Thursday, sound like someone who was in the right headspace of, look, it sucks, but if I'm going to get paid the money I think I deserve, I need to go show it on the field in 2023. And again, that's where we talked about the leverage with the Colts coming in. Jonathan Taylor, it made no sense for him to sit out. There's never a threat he was going to miss the season because not only does that hurt his contract and it's just going to roll over to next year and you don't really accomplish anything, you're not going to get paid the money you want if you now are coming basically a year and a month of not playing football. The last we saw, he was an injury-riddled 2022 season. You're not getting from the Colts or anyone else anywhere near the contract value you think you deserve by continuing to sit out and not getting back on the field. He at least said, and basically all those words, George kind of said that today and had that be the undertone of, look, it doesn't matter what I want. It matters, I'm here for my teammates and I'm here, I'm here now. Do you buy it, George? It's one thing to read it on Twitter. It's even one thing to listen to it. You were in the room, though. You can kind of feel a little bit how the player is feeling, right? Do you buy the words, at least for the short term in 2023, Jonathan Taylor is all in and will give it his all?
I think he definitely cares about his teammates, and I think they care about him. I mean, a lot of these guys, he's played with before. It's really just the rookie class that doesn't know him on a personal level. And even during training camp, when we were talking to the running backs, and Taylor was not around the team that much and was, glowering on the sideline. Even then, the running backs were saying he's in every meeting, he's helping us, he's giving us ideas, he's still trying to, help us be the best that we can be. That's always who he's been. I don't think that's ever going to change. I think he cares very much for this team as far as the interpersonal relationships. And again, from everything I've seen, he's got a decent relationship with Shane Steichen. Like I said on the Tuesday pod, you could see them at times, even during training camp, talking over on the side. It was always cordial. So I do believe that he's excited. I think we said, I don't know, maybe week 2, that is he watching? Is he excited about how this offense looks? And he pretty much confirmed that today, that, watching from the sideline, he's excited about what this team is doing and what he's seen from Anthony Richardson. And he wants to be a big part of that. So short term, absolutely. I think he's committed to this locker room and to what this team can do. And again, those things kind of go hand in hand, right? He needs the Colts to have a good season and he needs to have a good year himself. He wants to get a contract here or anywhere else.
And we've seen other instances too, where Lamar Jackson comes up where he requested a trade from the Ravens, and what happened? They eventually came together and got a contract extension. Just because he didn't officially rescind his trade request on Thursday or say he wants to be a Colt lifetime does not mean that a deal cannot get done. And like you said, I think it all comes back to, really, fair or not, how 2023 looks the rest of the season, how he pairs with Anthony Richardson, I think will determine his future if it's here in Indy or elsewhere. Because I do think the Colts, again, would give him the contract he's looking for if they hit it off. And we're talking about an explosive 1-2 punch. And even like we talked about on Tuesday's pod, about this offense being a top 10 offense potentially now with the addition of Jonathan Taylor at the end of the season. And also, because I'm with you, George, too, I don't think he's going to loaf it. Right? I don't think he's going to half-ass it and just kind of mail it in. Not only does that not do him any good in terms of, again, getting the contract he wants, but also, too, you kind of also heard, not that he said, and kind of said this, he didn't take playing for granted, but now when football is taken away from him, what was the last month of the season, basically all off season, all you're doing is rehabbing. He seems to genuinely miss it and genuinely be truly excited to be back on a football field and play football again.
His first thing he said actually was he decided to get back to doing what he loves, to play football. Before anything else, that was really first and foremost. He's happy to be healthy. And he's happy to be able to go out here and play again. So I also just don't think it's in him to really give less than full effort. We've never seen that from him in 3 years here. There's never been any indication that he's going to go half speed or give less than his best. Yeah, he was upset and he didn't take part in the off-season workouts, but that is a different thing than being on the field and playing the game. And I don't think anybody can go back and point to an instance and say Jonathan Taylor didn't give full effort on this snap. And I don't think that's going to change, this year.
One part that was interesting was obviously his health, right? And obviously the big question is him on PUP. Is he holding out? Is he truly healthy? What's going on the ankle? He said now he is 100% fully healthy. No reason to say he's lying. He's also had plenty of time for a surgery that, again, was supposed to take up to a month. Now, we're talking about 10 months recovering. He said what, George, that the offseason was basically all about recovery. Being on PUP was all about recovery and getting the injury back. Do you believe him?
I do not believe that at all. He said it was all about being fully healthy, and I think that was just something he could keep going back to every time he was asked about the contract. He clearly wasn't talking about the contract. Did not want to. Didn't expect him to. Honestly, didn't expect him to get much into the past. But that one, I believe he's excited to be here. I believe he loves football. I believe he's can't wait to get on the field with this team. I do not believe this offseason was all about getting healthy.
I would agree. The contract, whether he wants to admit it or not, I think absolutely had a play in it. But that's where I do give the Colts credit in the sense that, again, you could tell he's still frustrated in the sense that he wanted a new deal and didn't accomplish what he set out to do. He wanted a new deal, and as we're sitting here on October 5th, Thursday, he did not get it. And he's going to play this season under a contract he did not want to play for. But I do think the Colts, and whether it's Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard, just Jim Irsay, both, whatever, I think do deserve credit, Shane Steichen, maybe his teammates as well, for at least fostering this relationship back to the point where there's no doubt that Jonathan Taylor is going to play this year for the Colts, and there's no doubt that he'll play hard. Again, there was, like you said before, it's not in him to miss games and loaf it. So maybe even if they didn't do any work in general, it maybe would have been fine. He would have just held out. Again, not in his best interest to do so. But again, at least for the short term here in 2023, and we can get to the offseason when the offseason does come about, he seems to be all in. I do think the Colts and Jonathan Taylor both deserve credit for being at the point where we're at, where it seems like, maybe this is the way I'll ask you the question, George. Do you think going forward here, since he's talked on Thursday, that no other drama will pop up with Jonathan Taylor and the team between now and, let's say, week 18?
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Okay.
Like I said back, I'm still kind of where I was way back on cut down day when the trade didn't happen. I think everything he does, every word he says, every move he makes is going to get parsed here. He scores a touchdown. Who did he high five? Who did he not? Did he look happy going back into the huddle? I think that's just the world we live in. Until there's some kind of finality with this, he's going to get sick of it really quick. I'm sure we're all going to get sick of it really quick. But at least right now, he's smiling again. We didn't see that all summer long, so that's a positive. But I don't know. I mean, I think the next fork in the road is Halloween. I mean, that's trade deadline. As far as we know, the trade request still stands. I know Jay Glazer was reporting, I believe it was this weekend, that the trade market is minimal, if not non-existent. So I don't think there's a really good chance of that, but that's the next checkpoint. Once that passes, then he's here the rest of the year, and we'll see from there. But you do wonder if he gets nicked. What's that going to look like? Is he going to want to play? If he's not 100%, I mean, there's still a lot of questions left unanswered, and I think there's probably going to be at least uncomfortable reports, if nothing else, over the course of the rest of the season.
I think still because it's in his best interest to play and play really well, even if we're talking about an injury. Maybe this is just bad, and maybe this is just more hope than reality for me. I just don't think we'll see, or I don't at least expect a lot of drama or questions about where his head's at, if this is contract related or not. I hope I'm right. That maybe it's hard to tell until we're actually, in it and hear him talk and hear reports come out. But I do. for me, again, I guess hearing him talk today, I just feel like the hatchet, again, for 2023 only has been buried. Come the offseason, things absolutely can change and we can have a different story, different tune. But I think right now, because both sides, their best case scenarios align with both, with Jonathan Taylor playing well, it helps the Colts and also helps him. I think because of that, we'll still see, I think for the most part, two sides acting in harmony, we'll say for the most part here. Really fast before we get to Blaine, I'll ask you this, George, to finish off. You mentioned the Halloween trade deadline. Right now, what are the chances you would say Jonathan Taylor still could get traded out of 100?
Less than 5%, I would
Okay.
say. Really, really low.
Okay.
Someone would have to just blow them away, and I don't see that coming, but it's not zero.
I was going to say 1%, like just because you can't rule it out, but I'm very, very low. I would be shocked. Honestly, at this point, if he is traded by October 31st, I think today, at least for me, or Thursday, I should say, in case you listen to this on Friday, Thursday, to me, it felt like a point of he is back. He is committed to 2023 and 2023 only. And I think a lot of the future stuff they'll worry about when it gets there. But at least right now, it feels like Jonathan Taylor's focus is on playing at a level as high as he possibly can and is about doing the best he can, which is good for him and obviously good for the Colts and especially good for Anthony Richardson as well. All right, we'll continue to talk about Jonathan Taylor's return. We'll have Blaine Bishop. We'll also talk about our expectations if Jonathan Taylor could play. If he does play, what do we expect from him in the first time he's been on the football field since December? We'll give you that. We'll give you our predictions. Look to get back on the winning streak because right now we are on a 2-game losing streak when it comes to Colts predictions. So look to get back in the winner's circle. We'll do that, though, when we return. All right. So we're having a little issues here, George. There's pull the curtain back. We're having some technical difficulties trying to get Blaine on the show. So here's our promise here. We're going to try to get Blaine on maybe by not the time this podcast ends, but by the time Sunday does come around. Our goal is to have Blaine on the show for still to go behind enemy line. So now more than ever, subscribe to YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod, and make sure wherever you get your podcasts, you subscribe to ours. So we'll drop that Blaine Bishop interview if we're able to work out, figure out technology-wise how to get Blaine on the show. We'll drop that individually and separately right now this podcast. So make sure you still check that out and be up to date kind of to get the Tennessee, the enemy, the true enemy perspective of this game. We'll get to the meaning, George, of the Titans game here in a second, but we started the podcast with obviously Jonathan Taylor returning to practice, him speak with the media on Thursday for the first time since, was it June, right? Since June, being on the practice field for the first time since getting hurt in Minnesota back in December. Number one was ask flat out, do you expect Jonathan Taylor to be on the field and playing in Sunday's game against Tennessee?
And this whole saga has been so unpredictable. It's hard to expect anything, but the feeling is certainly moving in that direction. I mean, just the fact that Shane Steichen even mentioned it as a possibility seems like a big deal. I know, JT himself was kind of dancing around it and saying, got to see how it goes. This is literally day one for him. So he kept saying Thursday's a really big day, because he figure out how he's feeling and going forward. But it feels like the momentum is moving in that direction.
I would agree. Now we'll get to his role here in a second. I would expect Jonathan Taylor to be back in uniform here on the field for at least, again, a little bit of the game on Sunday. So I think he will play and finally make his long awaited return for the Colts. Now, with that said, what do you expect? Because I'll say, I think he's going to, even though I do think he's going to play, I don't expect a lot. Like Zach Moss, off the top of my head, George, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 18 carries, 88 yards. I think it was his stat line in his first game back when he broke his arm, like the first, 2 days of training camp and missed the entire time up until week number 2 against the Texans. Now, obviously, Jonathan Taylor's missed a lot longer of a time period than Zach Moss did, missing just basically 6 weeks of training camp or practice. So I'm going to go on a limb here, and I think you're with me here. I don't expect an 18 carry performance from Jonathan Taylor here in week number 1. I will put the number at 7. If I say 7.5 carries, George, for Jonathan Taylor on Sunday, you taking the over or the under?
I'll go slightly over. I'll go to 10. I just like a nice round numbers there. So I'll go slightly over, but I think it's going to be a limited role unless he gets hot. I think that's one of the things where if he comes out and he busts a big run early, as we've seen him do throughout his career, then Shane Steichen might be more willing to play him a little bit longer. But you would have to think it's going to take a little while to get back into it. Colts can definitely use him this week, though. I mean, this Tennessee defense has been outstanding against the run. This is definitely a situation where I think, having that extra playmaker in the back, good no matter who you're playing, but especially against this opponent, I think would really be helpful for this team.
I'm going to go under. I think it's going to be like around 5-6 carries, just because, again, it's been, and now that doesn't mean plays. I think it's just physical handoffs he gets. I think he'll be on the field for more than 5 or 6 plays. Like I said, just bare minimum as a decoy, just to have the defense thinking. I just think since it's been so long since December, I think you do want to ease him back in. And again, maybe fair or not, I do think kind of what's happened and his frustration with the team, I think will lend them to be maybe handle him a little more carefully, just to make sure they're not, ruffling any feathers early on. And also to preserve, again, what is one of their best offensive weapons, to make sure that you're not rushing him back too fast. So I'll say under 7.5, 5-6 carries, kind of get the juices flowing again. Basically have this being, for lack of a better term, a preseason game in his mind, since it's been so long. Well, I think I saw 290 days, I think, since he's been on a football field. So by the time Sunday comes, it's going to be 294 roughly since that Minnesota game. Been a long time. Well, it's a long way to say, George. It's been a long time since he's been on the field. I think that we'll kind of put a little bit of bubble wrap around him, kind of take it easy. So either way, whether it's you're right, 10 carries, I'm right, 5 carries, not a big impact. And it's still going to be on Zach Moss to really carry, and Anthony Richardson, to get this running game going. And it's going to be huge because, like you mentioned before, Tennessee is a good front, led by Jeffrey Simmons. They got after Joe Burrow. They had 3 sacks of Burrow last week in their win. Also 10 quarterback hits. I think probably the bigger number that stands out more. Now, obviously, Richardson is a lot more mobile. Again, need that mobility compared to Joe Burrow right now, who's not mobile, terribly mobile in general. Now with the calf injury, obviously limits him even more than that. But I do think, at least facing Aaron Donald, and you mentioned this point, I don't want to steer your thunder here, so I'll let you get into it a little bit more. But Aaron Donald, nice little warm-up this week for the Titans and then their ferocious defensive line, George.
Yeah, I think if you saw Anthony Richardson not get really shook by facing Aaron Donald, I think that's a good sign, because this Tennessee front is going to come at him hot and heavy. Jeffrey Simmons is right there. He's one of the top defensive tackles in the league as well. I don't know if Bernard Ryman's going to play. That's a big question mark. Obviously, still in the concussion protocol. If he's not ready to go, it's just that much more of a challenge for this offensive line. Maybe they'll get Ryan Kelly back. But it's going to be another game where I think, Richardson's going to have really be challenged to read the looks he's getting. And Tennessee has been known to just throw Rolodex of defensive looks out there. And I think for a rookie in particular, that's going to be difficult. He didn't get the chance to do it against Baltimore, which probably would have been the best prep. This is really the first time he's going to face a defense that changes, every snap and within a snap. And when you've got Simmons out there breathing down your neck, probably good that he had that experience last week. And it's why I still can't count them out, because as we talked about in the postgame pod, that situation, down 23 points, backup lineman in the game, Aaron Donald, getting ready to tear your head off, to come back from a 23-point deficit in that situation is pretty impressive. And so we'll see how he handles it on Sunday.
Hopefully, like I said, it's a good learning lesson, and hopefully it's a good learning lesson for this offensive line and Richardson with the pass rush they faced last week against Aaron Donald. And like I said, digging out of that hole, being resilient. We've seen the Colts in this 5-game losing streak to the Titans, get out to early leads. Carson Wentz comes to mind, up 14-0 right away, and you feel like you're going to run the Titans out of the building, only to choke that lead away. We've seen last year, Matt Ryan throws a pick 6 relatively early, and they can't, dig out of that hole. The Colts have, in this losing streak to Tennessee, have had both things happen to them. Get out to an early lead, choke it, get out to an early deficit, be unable to dig out. You hope that, again, now with a new head coach in Chase Ike, a new quarterback in Anthony Richardson, it changes how this team responds to the Titans, because, George, we kind of talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. Now, as the game preview pod is here, I'm sick of it. I know a lot of fans are sick of it too. The Titans are the worst. I hate the fact that they come in more times than not with a less talented team, and they're just a tougher, gruffer team, and more times than not punch Colt in the mouth. I am sick of it, George. And this has to be the game on Sunday that turns the tide, that really lets Tennessee know they were able to bully the Colts before. They were able to push them around before. Not anymore. That starts with Richardson. That starts even with Shane Steichen setting the tone, George. And it starts with this Colts team obviously getting off to a fast start, but just as importantly is that finishing strong. If we can get the Texans start to the game combined with the Rams end to the game, exclude overtime, end to the game, put them together, George, I want blood. That's what we need on Sunday here from this team.
First half against the Texans, second half against the Rams. That probably would be the best game the Colts have played this year if you could put that together. No question about that. You kind of mentioned it. I think it's interesting. Tennessee's situation. 5 straight wins for the Titans in this series, and it's run the gamut. Some have been high scoring games, some have been low scoring kind of slugfests, close games, blowouts, everything in between. Colts have gotten out the front early and blown it late. The Titans have started off early and run away with the game. So don't know what to expect on Sunday, but other than the fact that every time Mike Vrabel faces this team, it just seems like he's on his A game. And they're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. They're going to be disciplined. They're not going to beat themselves.
You're 100% right about that. And it's frustrating. I don't like Mike Vrabel. I have a lot of respect for Mike Vrabel. He's very good at what he does. And I don't think there's a coach in the NFL that gets more out of the talent than Vrabel does with his team, because they're always in the mix, even though despite the fact you look on paper, they're not in terms of roster names that pop, not a very star-studded roster when it comes to them, again, constantly being in the mix. But you said it before, George, one of the biggest keys here, and this is to you, Gus Bradley, getting the defense ready this week. Please go low and wrap up on Derrick Henry. This is a guy that has had nightmares, or has been in my nightmares, has been in the Colts defense's nightmares for years now. He is obviously always the king, and it feels like even when the Colts do a good job in the first quarter, that as his MO, he gets going later on, and he's a guy that really kind of get off to a slow start, third and fourth quarter, though, running through you at the end of the game and just ripping your heart out. I don't know why, again, no one decides to go low and wrap up at the legs. Everyone decides to tackle this guy at the chest, and he just throws you off and runs through you like a rag doll. This is a guy that up till last week has had a career low year. Up until the Bengals game, was averaging 3.2 yards per carry, lowest of his career. Against Cincinnati, he ran for 122 yards on the ground, almost 6 yards a carry. He was unstoppable, ran for a touchdown, threw for a touchdown. Do not let Derrick Henry get hot, George. Do not let last week kind of get the momentum going for Derrick Henry to get back on track. Have that be an anomaly. And that starts with wrapping up, going low, and meeting him in the hole and taking him down. Gang tackle.
I mean, it's not surprising he's getting hot right in time to play the Colts. That's kind of keeping with recent trends here. But one thing Tennessee does that's really smart. You would think as big as he is, as fast as he is, there's a lot of between the tackles runs and pounding, hammering that line. And that's not really the way they use him. They move him around a little bit. They get him outside. They put him on the smaller guys. They make Kenny Moore tackle him. They're going to make Juju Brents tackle him. They're going to make whoever the other cornerback is tackle him. Julian Blackman has a lot of experience with this. I think he's done as good a job as anybody of wrapping up and getting low on him. He's going to have to continue to do that. The linebackers are going to be huge on Sunday. I think that's, if ever there was a day for Shaq Leonard to look like his old self, it's Sunday. Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, they're going to be critical, in this game plan, because they're going to run it. Nobody has any illusions about what the game plan is. They're going to run it with Derrick Henry, and then they're going to run it with Derrick Henry again, and then they're going to run it with Derrick Henry again.
That's a good point, too. You're right. They not only kind of throw him inside and have him face DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. You're right. It is a lot of stretch plays, toss plays to have now Jalen Jones, Darrell Baker Jr., Kenny Moore step up. And again, it's simple, George. Get low. Ready? We're going to act it out here. Square up and just go for the leg. Just wrap up. Don't let him get going, especially, too. He's a downhill runner, right? Once he breaks kind of through that first wall or that first wave, now you let him get some speed. I was watching it last week. He ran for a 35-yard touchdown. He got through the first wall of the Bengals defenders, and forget it. By that point, when he's 10 yards, deep into a team's defense, you're not stopping him. You're going to try to tackle him. You're just going to bounce off him, and you're just going to run right into the end zone here. We've seen it so many times. It's infuriating every single time that I really hope this is the week it changes, George. And especially, too, Now, what's also interesting, one last thing I want to throw out here before we do get to picks for week number 5 here is, especially last week, the Titans against the Bengals were definitely more balanced, definitely ran the ball a lot, but also passed the ball a lot. Almost 400, I think it actually was 400 exact total yards they accumulated against a good Bengals defense. You had Ryan Tannehill slinging. They used a lot of play action. DeAndre Hopkins got involved. Nick Westbrook-Akine got involved. I wonder, George, if you're the Titans, do you just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? You run Derrick Henry, and that's how we've beaten the Colts now 5 times in a row, 4 times in a row in Lucas Oil Stadium. Or do you look at this right now, banged up secondary again, with now the loss of Dallas Flowers out for the year in an already thin secondary, and say, you know what? We got DeAndre Hopkins. Sure, we're mostly primarily running team, but maybe this is the week where now we air it out more with Ryan Tannehill and try to take advantage of, again, an inexperienced and young secondary. I wonder, George, I don't think we'll see it, but if you're Tennessee, it does beg the question of, do you kind of change your game plan here this week? Especially when you look at right now, the weakness of the Colts team, it is their secondary.
When you look at this 5-game winning streak that Tennessee's been on, Tannehill plays pretty well against Colts generally, especially when they get Henry going. And I think that'll be the game plan right there. Everything we would talk about on Tuesday pod of the ways that Jonathan Taylor can help Anthony Richardson, that's what Tennessee's going to try to do on Sunday. Run the ball, Derrick Henry, get that Colts defense to inch up, and then you go deep to DeAndre Hopkins. Then you go find Nick Westbrook. You use the passing game off the running game, and they've done that really well against the Colts during this 5-game winning streak. I don't care what Tannehill's numbers are for the season, what he does against everybody else. Going back to his days with Miami, he seems to kill the Colts on a consistent basis.
He does. And that's, again, it's going to be a big test for the secondary. Not only, again, trying to slow down the pass, which I think that we could see exploited a little bit more than we normally see from Tennessee, but also, like I said, it starts with Derrick Henry here. Make him one-dimensional. We kind of talked about the Rams last week. If you can make, especially Sean McVay, the play caller, be one-dimensional in his play calls and make it primarily pass, you can now get a win and help your secondary out by dropping more. If you are, again, the Colts, it has to be back to getting the Titans being one-dimensional. Slow down and stop Derrick Henry. And even though, like you said, Ryan Tannehill has played well, a lot of that has been because the Colts are selling out to stop Derrick Henry, and the play action game has been there for Tannehill all the time. If you now just eliminate the play action because there's not a big threat of the run, or the Colts get off to a hot start and now you need to throw if you're Tennessee to get back in the game, that, again, is where you play into your defense, and you can help your secondary out by putting more reinforcements back there because you take away one area that Tennessee wants to do, and that's run the ball. So it's for really, if you're the defense, second week in a row, it's the same game plan. Make Tennessee one-dimensional. Slow down Derrick Henry and really take away the play action pass for Ryan Tannehill here and help out, well, again, your secondary now that's beleaguered more than it was even last week. All right, speaking of beleaguered, George, our picks the last 2 weeks have not been very good. We started off hot, 2-0. We said it's a change us this year. New year, new us when it comes to picks. Now we are 2-2, coming back down to earth, 2-game losing streak here. As we look at the line as it currently sits, the Titans are a 2-point road favorite. George, what are we predicting here?
Well, I mean, we talked about this losing streak, 5 games overall. Colts have not won at home against Tennessee since 2018. That is a pretty scary number right there. They've come in Indianapolis. They've had their way last few times they've been here. But I'm going to go with the Colts victory because I think what's been missing, and Zaire Franklin kind of talked about it in general terms this week, that explosive playmaker at quarterback is what this team's been missing the last few years, is what the organization's been missing. Anthony Richardson's that guy. I think he leads the NFL in explosive play rate right now. And I think that's going to be the difference. I think he's going to make a few big plays that the quarterbacks in the past few years have not made. And it's going to be close. It's going to be a dogfight. It always is between these two. I'm going to go Indianapolis 27-24.
Ooh, okay. 27-24. Colts snap the 4-game home losing streak, snap the 5-game overall losing streak to Tennessee. George, I am with you. Sunday's the day. Sunday's the day this garbage stops. That Tennessee stops bullying the Colts, stops pushing them around. They show a pulse, and I think they finally show up here and put an end. So right now it has been a one-sided affair between the Colts and Titans the last 3+ years. It's been frustrating. It's been frankly disgusting to watch how this rivalry has really flipped on its head, where it's been a Colts owned and Colts dominated one side of the fair to now it's been the other way around. And I think it starts with a new head coach. You mentioned Anthony Richardson as well, a new quarterback, brings some offensive explosion to this team and to this offense for the first time that Tennessee is going to face in a while here. I think Sunday is really where we kind of see a new identity form for the Colts, to kind of the new era truly begin. Again, the 2 wins they've had so far were nice. That win in Baltimore was really impressive. I feel like this Sunday's win is going to mean something different. Not only is it a divisional win, it's a divisional win against a team that, again, has kicked your ass the last few years. This, to me, is really going to be that statement win where if we look back in 2023, we're going to say, where did you really believe that maybe this Colts team would do something special and really feel like that the tide is actually turned for them going forward here? I feel like we'll point to week 5 against the Titans. 27-20, the return of JT. Anthony Richardson's going to finish his second straight game. Let's go. Get him hot. Get him finished here. The Colts win 27-20. They put an end right now to the losing streak, and they send a message. The Colts are here for real. Let's go.
Do it.
Let's go.
That would do it. My favorite stat, I think we mentioned this on the last part. My favorite stat here, the last quarterback for Tennessee to lose a game to the Colts, Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, that's honestly, that's depressing. That is depressing.
The home game. Obviously, Tannehill lost during this streak. The last one in Tennessee was Tannehill, but the last quarterback to lose a home game to the Colts, Blaine Gabbert.
Time to change that. That is really tough. Wow. All right, George. The new era begins. Come on. Right now, Sunday, Lucas Oil Stadium. Place going to be rocking. It's going to be jumping. Make sure after the game you tune to one place and one place only. Because let me tell you, if they win, it's going to be a party. It is going to be a party. Sunday, let's say 5:00 p.m. Eastern, roughly here, after the post-game press conferences. We got you covered live. Again, remember, only on YouTube. So if you're listening to the pod, well, thank you. Make sure, though, you also subscribe on YouTube so you can see and watch our live instant reaction on YouTube. You can join in on the chat as well, and hopefully share your joy of beating the Titans for the first time in a long time. George, it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully we will check us out also to make sure you stay in tune, because we still will try to get Blaine Bishop on the show behind Enemy Lines, a separate podcast for this one here, but to get you set also for Colts-Titans on Sunday as well. So again, YouTube, wherever you get your pods, Blue Horseshoe Pod, make sure to subscribe. George, let's go. The streak, the domination ends on Sunday. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a really good game. Looking forward to it. The energy in the building should be pretty high as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably one of the best atmospheres in a while. I mean, obviously last year came off the rails, but we know what Colts fans can do when they are engaged. And I think Sunday will be one of those days.
We're going to the game. Be loud, be proud. Let's go. We'll talk to you after the game Sunday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.